Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ryan Eborn and I am here today on behalf of the School Health Marketing team. I want to start off by thanking you for joining us today and participating in our webinar with Martha Lopez Anderson. Martha is the board chair for Parent Heart Watch, which is a national organization dedicated to protecting youth from sudden cardiac arrest and working to prevent all sudden cardiac deaths related to sudden cardiac arrest. In this webinar, we will learn more about the dangers of sudden cardiac arrest, also known as SCA. We will learn about the importance of the time between an SCA emergency and defibrillation. We will learn about best practices in schools across the country for dealing with SCA. We will also learn why many school districts are making automatic external defibrillators, or AEDs, an essential part of their school's emergency response plan. Before I turn the time over to Martha, I would like to go over a couple of things. We will not be taking audio questions, but if you have questions for Martha during the webinar, you can submit them through the questions interface and go to webinar. We will have about 15 minutes after the webinar presentation to address questions. The webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be posted on School Health's website. And as attendees, we will email you the link for a future playback. Everyone who attends today's webinar will be receiving a certificate for attendance for joining us today, and you should expect to receive that in your email in about 3 to 4 business days. And we will also be discussing a special offer that we have for attendees at the end of the webinar today. If you are having technical difficulties with the audio or visual portion of the webinar, please let GoToWebinar know directly at 855-352-9003. And one final note, at the end of the webinar, we will be asking you to participate in a brief survey to let us know how we're doing. And now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Martha.
Thank you, Ryan. Hello, everyone. I want to begin by thanking School Health and Cardiac Science for facilitating this opportunity, especially during National Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. I also want to thank everyone that has taken the time to join this webinar today and for your efforts to protect the health and safety of our children. The goal of today's presentation is that you will take away what sudden cardiac arrest is and how it differs from a heart attack, why and how cardiac emergency response plans save lives. Is your school prepared in the event of a cardiac emergency? And if not, what do you need to do to ensure that it is? And some case studies that will show you about the importance of emergency response plans, performing CPR, the availability of AEDs, and using them. Sean was rollerblading when he collapsed in cardiac arrest. Those that witnessed his collapse at first thought he was having a seizure. CPR was administered, but an AED was not available for more than 10 minutes later when EMS arrived. This is the last photo I have of my son. These are just some of the faces of sudden cardiac arrest. Please take a moment and note their gender, race, and range of ages. Do any of them look sick to you? Many of them died during or after playing the sport they loved. These are four very special ladies, mothers and co-founders of Parent Heart Watch: Sharon Bates, Lynette Derminer, Rachel Moyer, and Laura Friend. They all lost a child to sudden cardiac arrest due to an undetected heart condition, and because the proper actions were not taken that would have given their children a chance for survival. They had the strength and foresight to connect and collaborate with many other families. And in October of 2005, this collaboration was formalized into a 501c3 public charity. So Parent Heart Watch has never veered from its original mission of protecting youth from sudden cardiac arrest and death. Parent Heart Watch leads and empowers others by sharing information, educating, and advocating for change. Last year, we took on our next challenge, Vision 2030, eliminating preventable deaths from sudden cardiac arrest in youth. Parent Heart Watch has members in 37 states at this time, many of which have foundations established in memory of a child lost or in honor of a child that survived cardiac arrest. They have programs at the local level that focus on education and awareness, as well as primary and secondary prevention strategies, those being heart screenings for early detection of conditions that may lead to sudden cardiac arrest, facilitating the proper placement of automated external defibrillators, and training in CPR and AED use. Parent Heart Watch member can be your allies in overcoming any obstacles that you may be facing in implementing a cardiac emergency response plan. Before we get into the deep of this presentation, it is important to know and understand what sudden cardiac arrest is. When the heart beats ineffectively or stops, oxygen-rich blood is not circulated to vital organs, which will lead to death if not treated promptly and effectively. So 9,500 people, 9,500 young people, that's just an estimate, as the true incidence of sudden cardiac arrest in young people under age 18 is truly unknown. The tenacious efforts of Parent Heart Watch to educate and advocate for a registry aligned with and influence federal interests. In 2012, it was announced that the Sudden Death in the Young Case Registry was being established as a partnership between the National Institutes of Health, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the National Center for Child Death Review. Data collection began in 2015. Sudden cardiac arrest is also the leading cause of death in exercising young athletes. And something that I must highlight is that many of these deaths are preventable. Often the terms cardiac arrest and heart attack are used interchangeably by many people, including the media, when in fact they are different: electrical versus plumbing. Now you can see the specific differences between cardiac arrest and a heart attack. Please note that children, teens, and young adults under age 35 do not suffer heart attacks, which are caused by a blockage. I would like to add that sudden cardiac arrest is the #1 killer of student athletes and the #2 medical cause of death among youth under age 25. Survival from sudden cardiac arrest. So knowing how to recognize sudden cardiac arrest is critical, as often precious time is wasted. Prompt recognition of SCA is the first step to an efficient emergency response. Survival rate decreases by 10% with each minute intervention is delayed. So this is why it is so very critical that bystanders administer CPR so that we can double or triple the chances of survival. And when we add that AED, we can only increase that survival rate. Recognizing sudden cardiac arrest. Teachers, school nurses, coaches, other school staff, and other anticipated first responders must maintain a high index of suspicion for sudden cardiac arrest in any collapsed and unresponsive student or athlete. So how do we recognize sudden cardiac arrest? Abnormal breathing means gasping for air, gurgling, or moaning. Brief seizure-like activity or involuntary leg and arms movement occurs in many cardiac arrest victims. And lastly, A blunt blow to the chest with an object can be with a ball, a bat, a hockey puck, and even another person. So bystander hands-only CPR. This is CPR that focuses on immediate chest compressions and does not include mouth-to-mouth breath. You're going to push hard and fast on the center of the chest to the beat of staying alive. Remember that by performing CPR, we're buying time until an AED and EMS arrives. An AED is an amazing resuscitation tool that will help further improve survival rates. That's providing that we, human beings, make them publicly accessible, not in a locked office or closet, that we retrieve them and use them, and that we maintain them according to the manufacturer's specifications. It's critical that these devices be publicly accessible. AED placement is encouraged in public buildings such as schools, businesses, at social and athletic events, and pretty much anywhere people congregate. And so here is this graphic in front of you. AEDs really can be used by anyone. They're very simple to use, and most of them without prior training. They guide you with audible or visual prompts, and the AED will never deliver a shock unless one is needed. So we have covered the links in the cardiac chain of survival. Please remember, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. We know that CPR and AED are effective in the treatment of sudden cardiac arrest, but having a written and well-practiced plan will ensure optimal response to sudden cardiac arrest and increase survival rates. In 2015, Parent Heart Watch and 10 other national health and safety organizations, led by the American Heart Association, developed a comprehensive toolkit to assist schools in implementing a cardiac emergency response plan. I'm going to give an overview of a cardiac emergency response plan, and this may seem like a lot of information, but keep in mind that you will have access to the implementation toolkit and resources after this presentation. When developing your school's cardiac emergency response plan, it's important to take into consideration school campus size, hours of operation, before and after school programs, including athletics. Identifying and assigning specific roles to personnel is going to ensure efficient response during a cardiac emergency. So certain roles that need to be assigned: a medical director, who is typically at the district level, and this person can provide medical guidance during the planning and review process of the cardiac emergency response plan. Then you have a coordinator, and this person will be responsible for a budget, cost of the AED if you don't already have one, replacement of batteries and pads, training and or recertification. Also for implementation of timelines and ongoing oversight of the program. And then you have the team members. These team members are those identified at each school in addition to the school nurse to respond when a cardiac emergency occurs. So what will the cardiac emergency response team be doing? They will be the ones that will be responsible for establishing scene safety and initiating the cardiac chain of survival, calling 911, starting CPR, retrieving the AED, and directing EMS to the victim. So appropriate training in CPR and AED use. Schools should really strive for all staff to be trained in CPR and AED use and recognizing sudden cardiac arrest. The members of the cardiac emergency response team should receive and maintain nationally recognized training and certification. Training lay responders within the school can truly make the difference between life and death. Remember, We're buying time until EMS arrives. Next factor is the efficient communication network to activate the emergency response. Effective communication with all areas of your school campus, this includes athletic fields and playgrounds, is necessary to avoid any delays in activating the school's emergency response team. There are various ways to connect with your school network. You can use telephones, cell phones, walkie-talkies, intercom, or even a PA system. So strategically placing AEDs and clearly marking the locations of these for easy access, the effective placement of the AEDs will allow the lay responders within the facility to retrieve the AED and deliver a shock to a victim within 3 minutes or less of collapse, whether the AEDs are inside or outside the school building, stationary or in the possession of an athletic trainer or coach. For athletic events and practices, it is recommended that you keep an AED on the sidelines. AEDs must be readily accessible for use when needed and never locked in an office or closet. If the AED is stationary and in a wall cabinet or rack or bracket, it should be placed an unobstructed height of 48 inches from the floor. And this is to provide accessibility and to be in compliance with the American Disabilities Act. Regardless of which mount you're using or choose to use, AED should be placed so that its readiness indicator face outward. AED locations should be clearly identified with a projecting or three-dimensional and universal AED sign, which should be installed above the cabinet or bracket. The AEDs in possession of an athletic trainer or coach are typically kept in a backpack or a Pelican case that should be marked as containing an AED. It shouldn't be just them, the ones that know that there's an AED in that backpack or Pelican case. Another important aspect of the cardiac emergency response plan is integration of the plan with the local EMS. So a copy of the cardiac emergency response plan should be provided to your local emergency response team, and this may include EMS, fire, and police departments. Review and coordinate the cardiac emergency response plan with them. Let them know the number of and location of AEDs at your school. Local EMS should also be included during your emergency drills. Distributing the plan throughout the school campus. So we can take all the time in the world to put a plan together, but if really we don't share that with everyone, then we've defeated the purpose of what we want to accomplish, which is to increase survival rates. So everyone in your school should know that a plan has been adopted. Your school's cardiac emergency response plan should be posted in every classroom, cafeteria, faculty break room, restrooms, gymnasium, school offices, and any outdoor athletic areas. It should also be posted next to each AED and school telephone. Any organization using space within your school should be provided with a copy of the plan and have them sign acknowledging receipt of the same. If any updates are made to the plan, these should be distributed and communicated as made. Maintaining the AED battery and pads to ensure readiness when needed. The AED should be regularly checked and maintained according to the manufacturer's specifications in the operating manual. A log of maintenance activity should be maintained. A school-designated person will be responsible for verifying the equipment readiness and for keeping the maintenance activity log. A resuscitation kit should also be connected to the AED carry case. The kit should contain latex-free gloves, razor, scissors, towel, antiseptic wipes, and a CPR barrier mask. Conducting emergency drills is an essential component of the cardiac emergency response plan. It's recommended that you perform a minimum of 2 successful drills each school year with the participation of school response team, school nurse, athletic trainers, coaches, and any other targeted on-site responders. So what defines a successful drill? This is when you have fully completed the drill in 5 minutes or less. Again, that's what defines a successful drill, completing it in 5 minutes or less. And lastly, conducting annual review and evaluation of the plan. A review should be done at least annually to determine if any additions, changes, or modifications to the plan are needed. Changes to the plan may be triggered by changes in your school facilities, equipment, personnel, a review after an actual cardiac emergency has occurred at your school, and established guidelines. Overcoming the fear factor. I always tell people, do what you want others to do if it were your loved one. Take action. So this slide tells you can't acquire a disease by administering hands-only CPR. And there are federal and state Good Samaritan laws that protect you and people who use AEDs in good faith from liability risk. So this is a perfect example of why school cardiac emergency response plans are so important. This is Abel. 15-year-old Abel was playing soccer when he suffered cardiac arrest. CPR was administered by the school nurse and coach. The AED required by Florida state statute was in a golf cart on the field where Abel collapsed, but it was never retrieved or used. And this is Abel today. Because his brain was deprived of oxygen, he is living in a persistent vegetative state requiring 24-hour care. So look at the cost of his, what it costs to take care of Abel, $15,657,279. And the cost of really implementing a cardiac emergency response plan, well, that's just priceless. So you may be familiar with this story, with Claire's story. Claire's story went viral. The story of survival went viral, and many people became very acquainted with what took place at her school. After she collapsed, school staff and a parent called 911 and administered CPR. The AED that was mounted on the wall of the school's gym was retrieved and used within 3.5 minutes. These are Claire's teammates. Their friend and teammate is alive because her school was prepared. Claire's school had received an AED and tools for implementing a cardiac emergency response plan and drill from an AED grant program through Parent Heart Watch. Even though that was not the AED used to save Claire's life, this is what the director of admissions sent to Parent Heart Watch. This is an event that you pray never happens at your school, but when it does, it's imperative to be prepared, and we were, thanks to you. When Michael collapsed in cardiac arrest, his coach called 911, started administering CPR, and gave 2 orders. Someone grab the AED, someone else go outside and help guide the ambulance when it arrives. Kosa's story is very dear to me, as I was personally involved in the placement of the AED that saved his life. A bystander called 911, his father administered CPR, The AED in the school's gym was retrieved and used to restart his heart. I'm happy to report that Koza is not only alive, but he's thriving. And this is a perfect example of an organization, in this case the YMCA, using a school's gym. I really felt strongly about including this because this athletic director went above and beyond. And this is Edison's athletic director, Jeff DeCoco, and a Walmart store manager's donation of a bicycle, helmet, and a backpack that now allows the track coach to carry the AED so that the life-saving device is with him whenever he rides the bike to follow runners as they train. And you can see it in this photo. So on the newly launched Parent Heart Watch website, parentheartwatch.org, we have an array of resources for you, and some of them are listed here. I want to highlight the Cardiac Safety Emergency Response Plan, the implementation resources, evaluation materials, and templates. All of those are available for you, in addition to educational materials that we are happy to ship to you at absolutely no charge. One of the biggest misconceptions about sudden cardiac arrest is that it just happens and there's nothing you can do to stop it. The truth is that sudden cardiac arrest is preventable, but that doesn't happen by chance. I want to encourage you to visit our website and take the prevention promise, 5 to stay alive. And then if you could please share it with others, we would greatly appreciate it. So this concludes my presentation, and I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Martha. For Martha, about what we've covered today, or about a situation that you have faced or that you are concerned about in your school or your district, feel free to submit your question through the questions feature in GoToWebinar, and she will be happy to answer those questions for you. Martha,
Ryan,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
While we're waiting for questions to be submitted, I just wanted to mention that often we recognize that often schools have challenges with securing funding to place an AED. And so I want to remind you again to keep in mind that we have Parent Heart Watch members in 37 states. Many of them place AEDs, donate them, or provide grant funding for the school to purchase their own AED. And we also can provide guidance on specific language that can be included when you're perhaps completing an application grant. We are happy to help so that you can maximize the chances of you securing that funding.
And Martha, you mentioned something about that a little bit earlier in the presentation when you were talking about SOSA, I believe it was. When that AED was placed, it was kind of a direct result of you assisting the school with that grant through providing them language. Is that correct?
And in that particular case, it was a direct donation.
I see. Okay.
It was actually Claire's story out of Georgia, where Parent Heart Watch had an AED grant program, and schools had to apply and had to complete a video and so on, and they were one of the schools that received an AED.
Okay, we have a question that has come in from one of our attendees named Kathleen. She's asking how we get, or how she would get the materials that is shipped to them, the posters and so on.
They would go to our website, parentheartwatch.org, and under the resources tab, there is a way of ordering all the materials. You can specify the quantity, exactly which specific materials you're interested in, and we will ship them exactly to the address that you provide.
Okay, great. Thank you. Martha, you mentioned a couple of states, or actually a number of states that don't have members with Parent Heart Watch in them. If any of our attendees today are interested in becoming or working with Parent Heart Watch, how would they get in contact with you for that?
Well, I would greatly appreciate that. That's wonderful. We're always looking for people that are want to help at the local level, and that's also available through our website. We have various membership categories for parents that have suffered a loss. Then we have associate members who are parents that have a child living with a heart condition, the young survivor, and other family members. They can join through the associate membership. And then we have partner members, and those are nonprofit organizations and other individuals that want to help protect youth from sudden cardiac arrest and death.
Okay, great. Thank you. We've got a question from Roger, who is asking, when you see schools that have AEDs that are not deployed, what is the most common reason that those AEDs are not deployed?
I think oftentimes it's misinformation and the lack of having perhaps a champion that really drives the message. I think the perception is that sudden cardiac arrest doesn't occur, particularly in young people. And obviously, while this presentation was focused on students, sudden cardiac arrest in schools can happen to anyone. And so we need these devices readily accessible. And we're happy to help with that as well. I mean, I can't tell you how many schools I've been to where either a device wasn't properly identified, wasn't publicly accessible, was in a box under a desk, a variety of different things. And so a lot of time is just about arranging a conversation via, whether it's face-to-face, by phone, but really making sure that we connect with all the right people. We have amazing relationships with school nurses, and so they're great champions, and we do anything we can do to help them maybe drive that message with a school administrator or others at the school level.
Okay, great. Thank you. From Barbara, we have a question that says, should AEDs go on school field trips, elementary school, preschool to 5 grade levels, basically anywhere off of the school campus?
So I am going to say yes, providing that your school has another device that stays at the school, because you obviously don't want to leave a big number of people unprotected. But schools that have more than one device absolutely take their AEDs, whether it's on a field trip or even when they're having a field day, a variety of things. I mean, but yes, but I think it is very important to highlight that we want to make sure that if you have a school with, say, 1,500 students, that you don't leave, a great number of those unprotected to take the AED on a field trip.
And you had mentioned earlier in the presentation that the AED placement should be, I believe it was within 3 minutes of any location in the school. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so that would...
3 minutes from the time of collapse to shock. I mean, obviously, if you can retrieve that device sooner, that's much better. So yeah, 3 minutes or less from collapse to shock.
And so for campuses that have multiple buildings, that would include in each building. For campuses that include multiple floors, that may include on each floor. Is that what we're understanding?
Correct. And sometimes it's challenging. Again, sometimes schools simply don't have the resources. So that's when you really have to look at, okay, where do the most people congregate at any given time? And then choose the site based on that. Because we know that sometimes a school really should have, say, 5 AEDs, but they only have one. And so the important thing is to decide where does it make most sense to place that device, where do the most people congregate at any given time, and start there.
And that's a perfect segue into a comment and a question that we have received from Beth. Beth tells us that she's recently implemented a school emergency response team plan at her school. She feels the need for a second AED is there. They need to have a second AED in order to meet that 3-minute goal. And they had to get special funding for the purchase of the AED that they do have now. And she's wondering if there is any way or any funding or anything that you know about to get funding for purchase of the second one. The first one that they have, they keep next to the gym, which is all the way on one side of a school. But they have, obviously all of the rest of the school that is farther away from that. So is there anything that you know about or that you can share with us as far as getting funding for a second unit?
So there's a variety of different things that I can mention. So first, I'm happy if, did you say it was at Barbara or Beth?
Beth.
Sorry. Beth. So if Beth can get in contact with me, I'm happy to provide further guidance. But in general, I will tell you this, whether, again, keep in mind, I'm not sure where Beth is located, but if we have Parent Heartwatch members there, that's the first place to go. We have been effective also working with civic organizations, Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, a variety of different groups that really know and recognize the importance of having these life-saving devices. This is a tangible item. This is not a want. This is a need. And we haven't had any one of those civic groups say no. So oftentimes is checking with local civic groups in your area. If we can help you with putting together a very concise presentation to drive that message and secure that funding, we're happy to do that. The other thing is keep your fire rescue departments in mind and your emergency medical services. Funding comes from each state gets EMS funds, and those funds then go down to the county level. And you can also go through that avenue because when the county EMS system gets funding, that funding is available, and it's available for things like placing automated external defibrillators. So, and I'm happy again to give direct information about that to anyone that wants to get in touch with me. And my email, direct email, is martha@parentheartwatch.org.
Okay, thank you. And Beth, if you got that information, you can email Martha directly, and I will also pass your information along to Martha so that she has that on her side. We have a question from Christy asking about cards that are placed around the school by the phones, what these cards should say, what they direct people to do when they're calling EMS, what kind of information should these cards provide?
So the information is really summarized version of your cardiac emergency response plan, and again giving the direct information, and that's all in the resources that are available in the cardiac emergency response toolkit. So I will direct you to that. Let me see. I know each school can vary on what information they want to disclose or include on there. I'm just trying to make sure that I have everything in front of me. It just basically includes information as to, what to do, or reminders. You'd be surprised a lot of times people in a moment of an emergency, we tend to forget, we get nervous. And so, reminding everybody of the basic steps and then who the cardiac emergency response team is. and where they can be contacted, so that then the emergency response team can be activated.
And I know a critical part of that that you touched on earlier is actually something that people may not think of, and that is sending someone out to meet the EMS teams, especially with people who are on a larger campus or that have multiple buildings. Precious moments can be taken up by the EMS teams trying to locate where the victim is.
Absolutely. Yeah, our EMS has to respond to many places, and many times we assume that they're familiar with the facility, and in fact, they're not. And so it's critical that somebody is outside and meets them and guides them directly to where that victim is.
Exactly. Okay, we'll give another couple of moments for other questions if anybody has anything that they would like to have Martha address. All right, if we can advance to our, I'm sorry, we've got one final question here from Barbara. She says that our school emergency procedure for use of an AED states that AEDs can only be used by CPR and AED trained people, and she's asking if this is correct.
Well, when AEDs are publicly accessible, and the fact that they're very easy to use, yes, in the cardiac emergency response plan, your team, you want to make sure that they are trained and certified. However, I really, it's like a message that would be put on an AED cabinet saying that this can only be used by trained responders. Come on. I mean, I think the truth is that if you don't know how to do CPR, when 911 can guide you, the 911 dispatcher can guide you, and that's been done effectively many times across the country. And AEDs are extremely simple to use. They walk you step by step. And so I think that, wow, if there is not a team member from that cardiac emergency response team, I would hate to discourage someone from taking action.
And we have received information from the American Heart Association. We have some of that referenced on our school health blog about the survival rates increasing even by lay bystanders who aren't trained in CPR. So it is important to be able to administer CPR, even if you feel that your training may be rusty or if you haven't been formally trained.
Correct.
All right, that's all the time that we have for today. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. We've hoped that you found the information to be useful, and we would like to offer a final thank you to Martha for sharing her wealth of knowledge for us.